we are going to talk about three categories of music. First, art music. This is also known as classical music. We'll learn later that classical refers to a particular period of time, and so that's actually not the best label for this type of music, and so it's commonly referred to as art music instead. Art music is performed music. There's a performer, an audience, and generally there's a composer. And the intention of art music is communicating artistic ideas. That's vague. We'll have to elaborate on that later on in the semester. A second type of music is entertainment music, also known as popular music. This also involves a performer and audience, and the intention of entertainment is to entertain or amuse. Rather than being completely discrete entities, there is actually a continuum between art and entertainment. There is plenty of art music that is entertaining, and there is some entertainment music with artistic qualities. And our assessment of a particular composer or artist can change with time. For instance, Scott Joplin. Scott Joplin was a ragtime composer and used to be considered a popular composer. One of Scott Joplin's most famous pieces is The Entertainer. Nowadays, we tend to think of Scott Joplin as an art music composer because his music has outlived his era. Ragtime was popular music at the turn of the 20th century. There were tons of ragtime composers, some more famous than others. The ragtime craze died off nearly 100 years ago. It lasted until about 1920, when jazz became the new big thing. All of those ragtime composers who were so popular, we have forgotten about, except for Scott Joplin. There's something special, something artistic about his music that makes it appealing beyond his own era. His music sounds like it comes from that era, but somehow it doesn't sound dated. One type of music that the textbook neglects almost entirely is folk music. And I'm not talking about Bob Dylan or James Taylor. When I say folk music, I'm referring to music that comes directly from the people, the folk. If we form a circle with art music, entertainment, and folk music, most any piece of music that we encounter can be defined according to how it falls on this chart. Is it purely one of these categories, or does it fall between two of them, or even three of them? For instance, Bach. Bach falls squarely in the art music area. His music was not popular in its own day. It is somewhat popular today, but it's not something you'd hear on the radio except on a classical station. It's pretty much all art music. Mozart did have some popular appeal during his own time, so we might put Mozart a little bit closer toward entertainment. Similar with Beethoven. Beethoven also was popular during his own time, and he has appealing melodies in many of his works. Somebody that's even closer to the entertainment side would be Tchaikovsky. his music is very appealing to a wide audience. Alright, we've already talked about Scott Joplin, who started out as on the entertainment side, but we think of him more on the art music side. And then what about the Beatles? They were definitely a pop group. We think of them more today as their music having artistic qualities. So again, the Beatles started out as entertainment, but more toward that side. And I'm sure there are plenty of artists you can think of that fall squarely in the entertainment area. If we go back to 1917, we can find very old recordings of popular music from that time that has not outlived its era. For example, this one called A Bachelor Gay by Peter Dawson.
A bachelor gay am I, though I suffered from Cupid's star, but never thy vow will I say die in spite of an 18 star. For a man always loves a girl, who though the fence must be between, he's always squares, he'll always rule. So every girl he tries to woo, but she doesn't bother fair.
So this is music very much of its own time. It was very popular in its own time, but today we don't regard it very highly. Alright, so what about folk music? Well, we got some people that maybe somewhat that direction. You have someone who is highly regarded both as an entertainer and as an artist, but also heads toward the folk side, and that would be Bob Dylan. But I don't put him down too close to folk music because he's too much of an artist, too much of an entertainer to be classified as a folk artist. So who are the true folk musicians? We don't know who they are because they're just regular folks. They're not professional or schooled musicians. Throughout history, folk music has been an integral part of life for many people, and it's something that is dying out as music increasingly becomes something that we consume rather than something that we create. Folk music was the first kind of music ever made. It is often part of national or cultural identity, and yet there is very little true folk music left in the world. In this country, we tend to think of folk as performers who strum acoustic guitars and sing. Most of the time that's not folk music. That's popular music in a folk style. Folk music is music without a performer or audience. It is music that we as people make spontaneously without any thought or hope of getting rich or famous. Folk music is also music without a single composer. Songs are passed from one person to another, but are not preserved in any particular form. The songs are continually changed as they go from one person to the next. The words are modified, new verses are added, the melody changes just a little, and so on.